Hello there, Chris P. Williams here. I hope you're well. In this tutorial, I'm just going to walk you through using the pen tool within Affinity Photo, within the photo persona. And I've created two layers here, one black and one white. The first thing you need to do is to select your pen tool. You can either press the P key, which is a shortcut, or you can just select it straight from the toolbar on the left. And you'll notice at the top of the toolbar then, the pen options are displayed. And we're going to start by looking at this mode button. And you can see the first one selected is pen mode, and the pen mode is the most powerful and precise mode to use within Affinity Photo. It allows the user total control over the shapes, the corners and the nodes, which I'll come to light a little bit later on. Now I'm just going to quickly draw a box, and that's simply a case of placing points where you want the corners of your box to be. And before I draw this final one, I just point out, as I hover my mouse over the final node to create my shape, you can see a little O icon appears to the bottom right hand corner of that icon. So it's gone and the O icon appears, and that's telling you that you're now going to lock that shape into place. So I'll click on that. So that's joined up, and this is now seen by Affinity Photo as a continuous shape. Now if I press the Control key or Command key on a Mac and left click on this node and keep my finger pressed on the left mouse button, I can drag that node wherever I want in my image. Likewise, if I go down to the node here, Control and left click whilst holding down the Control key and the left mouse button, I can now drag that node wherever I see fit. You're probably thinking what use you have for creating shapes like this. Well, the primary use is for making elaborate selections within your photographs. For instance, if you wanted to make a cutout, which we'll go on to a little bit later on in this tutorial, it makes that process a lot easier. And once you've created your basic shape, you have two options up in the top corner. One is mask and one is selection. And this is why I created a black and white layer at the beginning of this tutorial, just to demonstrate this to you. So I'm going to create a mask now to mask out this top white layer. And you can see it's masked out all of the area outside of the shape I created. So you can see it's quite a clever way of masking, and I'm just going to Control and Z that now to undo to get back to our shape. And the other option then is a simple selection, so we can click on selection, and we've now got a selection based on our shape we created. And I can feather that selection, so I can go to feather, radius, apply, and I can delete now the middle of this white layer, and I'll Control and D now to get rid of those marching ants, and you can see the effect we've had. And if I was to take that layer then and move it around my scene, you can see it is a true cutout that we've created. So I'll just Control and Z or Command and Z on a Mac to undo, and we'll go back to our shape. Now I'm going to delete this selection now by pressing Control and D, and I'm going to create a new one, again using the pen tool in the pen mode, but this time I'm not going to create a box, I'm going to create some curves. And to do this, you place your first node by pressing left, and then you create your second node, but this time you press the left mouse button and you drag. Now you drag in a direction opposite to where you want your curve to be created. So I'm left clicking and I'm dragging downwards, and you can see my curve goes upwards. I'll create another one. So it's left click, drag, and my curve will go upwards in the opposite direction to which I dragged. And again, I'll go up and the curve goes down, and to finish you can see the little O symbol appears to tell me I'm locking my shape. So you can see you can create quite elaborate curves, and very smooth curves using this methodology. And I'm going to get rid of that layer again, and we'll create another curve, because I want to create a curve going into this shape. So I'm going to press Alt or Option on a Mac and click on that, and my next curve now is independent of that previous curve creation, in as much I can now decide to go out that way, or Control Z, I can go that way. If I'd continued using the previous method, this was my second node, if I created a third node with the intention of making a curve in here, watch what happens. You see, the curve wants to go that way. down towards the right, because that's the direction of this control node. But I dictated I wanted my curve to go that way, so this created a conflict, which is a nice conflict in a way, because it allows us to create really smooth S-curves. And again, if I control click on this node, I can develop that S-curve as I see fit. So it can have its uses. But in this instance, what I wanted a sharp corner here, and I wanted a new curve to be created, very much like a shark fin kind of shape. So I'm going to press Ctrl and Z to go back to that position. So again, I'm going to Alt click to break that curve control, so you can see it snapped off. And I'm going to create a new curve here, dragging down to the right so that my curve goes up towards the left corner. And I've created my shark fin shape. And again, if I was to click on here and drag, it will automatically create a curve in the opposite direction, because the start curve was also in the same direction. But if I was to left click and drag downwards, again I'd get this curvy S line, which is not what I want. I want a nice curve going along here. So I'm going to Ctrl and Z, Alt click and click on the last node you created, and now I'll hover over my start point and you can see the little O symbols appeared, and I'll drag downwards and I've got my curve going inwards. Now once you've created your shape, again you can just press Ctrl and click to alter the shape as you see fit. I can turn that into an outward curve or an inward curve, and I can do the same with this curve, inwards, outwards. Another thing you can do as well is, rather than using these nodes, is you can control and click on the line itself and just drag it. So if I control and click on here and just drag outwards or drag inwards. So you can see it's a very effective way of creating elaborate shapes. And I'll delete this curve now, and we'll go on to the next mode, which is a smart mode. And this is very similar to the pen mode, with the only difference being the software will decide which direction you're going to in respect of your curve. So for instance here I've gone bottom corner, top right, and it's assumed I'm creating some kind of box. So I'll go down here, and then if I click over here, it will naturally create an S curve. So it's very similar to the pen tool, but it allows you to create very easily nice flowing line shapes. So all the lines will flow in a nice smooth fashion. So you can see it's very similar to the pen mode, but it is for occasions where you want to get a smooth flow to your selection. Hopefully that's explained that mode to you. And before I proceed, I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to show you one other useful feature. I'm going to tick this checkbox here where it says use fill, and I'm going to change my color now to red, and I'm going to create a simple curve, and you can see it automatically fills a shape for me. So that can have its uses if you want to create shapes for your images, for instance. It's a very simple process using the pen tool, but the primary use of the pen tool is very much that of making elaborate selections, but you can use it as you see fit. Okay, so I'm going to click on the top curve and drag it to my bin to get rid of it, and we're going to go on to the next mode, and that is the polygon mode. And the polygon mode is for creating straight lined or straight edge shapes with sharp corners. And if I left click to create a new node and drag, you can see it has no effect on the curvature of that line. It only has an effect on the position of the endpoint. So I'll click here, drag, it has no effect. And if I drag it over the start node, it will automatically join. So we've created a simple shape. And again, we can use that as a mask, or we can use it as a selection. Control and C to copy, and Control and V to paste, and we can turn off our white layer, and you can see we've now got a shape that we can use as we see fit. So I'll just turn that layer back on, and we'll get rid of that shape, and I'll press Control and D or Command and D on a Mac to get rid of my marching ants, and we'll move on to the next mode. So going back to my pen tool, I'm just going to click on the line mode, and this is as simple as it says on the tin. You create lines by left clicking and dragging. Left click and drag. So you see the lines don't actually join up. Each line is independent, but I can press Control and hold, left click and drag, and I can move that line wherever I see fit. So hopefully that's explained to you what the various modes are within the pen tool. And I'll just get rid of these layers by highlighting them. If you want to select multiple layers, click on the top layer and then press Shift and select the layers you want to delete, and then left click and drag into the bin. So that deletes all those layers for you in one easy sweep. Now we're going to move on to the convert options. So I'm going to create a simple curve shape, and we're going to demonstrate the convert buttons. So now if I control click this node and I go to convert to sharp, watch what happens. It does what it says on the tin. It converts that node to a sharp node as opposed to a curve node. And again, if I want to convert that back to a smooth node, I could just click convert smooth, or I can convert to smart. And as I said earlier, the smart mode will automatically create your curves for you to make sure that the line flows as smoothly as possible. Okay, so hopefully that's explained the convert mode buttons. And the next buttons to look at are the action buttons. And you've got one here, break curve, and that is simply a case of clicking on it, and it has a similar effect to the sharp button. But if I press the control key, you can see it's actually separated those points. So I'll Control and Z, put that back to the way it was. So do it one more time. So this node currently, if I control click, it's joined. I can't separate it. But if I click on the break curve, you can see the curve is removed, and that's because it's actually separated those two endpoints. And the close curve will simply close our shape selection, and it will take into account the start and end points of our curve. And so if I just click on close curve, you can see it automatically joins our shape for us. Okay, and the smooth curve option will modify our shape by adding extra nodes just to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So if I click on the smooth node action button, you can see more nodes are created, which just allows us more finer control within our shape. So I'll Control and Z that, and I'll go back to this start point. And the next action, which is reverse curve, basically switches between endpoints. So you can use that as you see fit. Okay, so how can you use the pen tool in real life, as it were? Well, I've got an image here of these padlocks on this wrought iron fence, and I'm going to attempt to cut the wrought iron and padlocks out of this image and transfer it to another image just using the pen tool. So I'm just going to quickly develop this slightly. I'm going to increase my exposure and push my black points, a little bit of vibrance, and develop. And now we're back into the photo persona. I'm going to click on my pen tool, P being the shortcut, and I'm going to zoom in on a start point, and this looks as good as any, and I'm just going to use my hand tool to drag down, zoom out slightly, and I'm going to click in this point here, drag out, and adjust my curve so that I'm getting most of the wrought iron. And you notice if I've got a shallow curve control, pulling it back, you can see the end point gets steep and the beginning point remains narrow. But if I take it more towards the middle, then that gives me a more even result. And I can see here that the beginning part of this curve is steeper. So if I drag out further, and that will do the job. And if I zoom in, you can see I'm cutting just inside the wrought iron work, which is what I want. It just makes my job a lot easier. You can actually go into a lot of detail using the pen tool. So for instance, if I press Control and click to add a node, and Control and click to add another node, I've added 2 nodes here, and I'm going to Control and click the first one and drag it up slightly, Control and click the second one and drag that up slightly, and then I'm going to Control and click in between them and add another node, and then Control and click to select that one, and you can see you can make very, very fine adjustments. So if I Control click, you can see I can follow that line exactly. But I'm not going to do that today, just for the purpose of this tutorial. I'm going to make a quick rough selection. I'm going to Alt click now to sever that curve control on my last node, and I'm going to add a second node, drag out, use my hand tool to drag up, and I'm just going to click a straight line there, and Alt click to break the curve node, and I'm going to click on the top of this lock here, and just going to drag out just to follow the curve. So if I zoom in, you can see I'm following roughly the curve of that lock. So I Control click to refine that. I'm trying to avoid the background, and that will do the job. And I will click here to create a second curve. So you see it's very, very good for making curve selections. It's very, very accurate. You can take as much time as you like. I'll just click on here, and you can see it's giving me that squirrely line curve because the direction of the last curve control was this direction. So I'll just Control and Z that, Alt click to start again, and I'll click on the edge here, and I'll keep it short because this part of the curve is quite shallow and this part is quite steep, and that will do the job. And I'm just going to Alt click to break that, and now I'm just going to draw a straight line to here, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to click here, find the apex of my curve, and it's about there. That will do the job. We can finesse it a little bit later on. Now I'm just going to select outside my image now, just to make my life a little bit easier. It's not really important at this point. And I'm going to return now to the top of this wrought iron, and I'm going to make another selection now along this edge, and I'll Alt click this just in case. It's always a good idea to make a habit of Alt clicking, and then you've got total control over each of the curves. So I'm going to click and drag, and I think that will do. Now I zoom in, I can see there's just a small little straight here, so I'm going to Alt click on that node there, and I'll click there, so we've got a straight line along the edge of the padlock, and I'll zoom out. We'll click here, drag to the apex of a lock, or the apex of that curve, keeping it slightly inside, and I'm happy with that. So now I know my next curve is going in this direction, and that node is going in that direction, so I know I need to break that by Alt clicking or Option clicking on a Mac. And I'm going to go down to a suitable point here, and I'm going to click, drag to my apex, which is usually around the middle, and that should do the job. And a hand tool to drag up. I'm just going to make a rough selection outside and return it here. Now you can see it gets a little bit intricate, so the direction of my curve is going this direction, so that's good. So I can just click on, if I zoom in here, so I'll Alt click to break, and I'll click a new node there, Control click to bring that one down slightly, and that's a lot better. And now I can Alt click on here, and we'll create a point straight along that edge, and I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to go straight into this corner by the lock, and I'm going to find the apex, and I think that will do the job. If I zoom in, Control click, and you can zoom in as much as you like to make it more precise. And I'm just going to Alt click that to break the link, and there you go, I've got a nice straight edge. Now if I scroll across, I can create another straight edge, and if I scroll up I can create another straight edge, and again, and again, and again. And now if I scroll out, I want to create a rough curve just here. I'm going to alt click and break that, and I'm going to click on the other side of this little nodule, and I'm going to drag upwards to follow the curve of that. And while I'm here, I'll just finesse that selection there, and that's good enough for me. So I'm going to zoom out now and put one more node here. I Control Z and break that link because I didn't like the way the beginning of this curve started. So just inside of my wrought iron work, and find a midpoint, and that will do. And again, I'm going to come outside my image. This doesn't really matter, it doesn't really affect the overall selection. So I'm going to zoom out, scroll in, place a node there, and I know there I went a little bit too deep on my selection, so I'm just going to control click and drag it back in just to bring it under control, and I'm going to control click on this curve node just to finesse that slightly, and likewise I'm going to drop this one down because I'm getting a little bit too much of the background, and I'm going to bring that into line there and drag, and I'm going to alt click to break the link. It's always a good habit, like I said, and we'll get our final curve of the wrought iron. Right, and now I'm just going to click one node here and finally close my selection. So if I zoom out, Control and 0, you can see I've now selected all of the wrought iron work. I've got two little bits in the middle here which I haven't touched, but I'll go back to those a little bit later on. And before I turn this into a selection, I'm going to zoom in and see if there's any effective edits I can make without taking up too much of your time, because I know this tutorial is going on. So I'm going to just click Control and click here, and Control and click here, and here in the middle, and I'm just going to control and drag that curve up slightly and this curve in and up, just to show you how you can finesse this selection. And I'm going to click on the middle node, and I'm going to drag it up to the peak of this little nodule of wrought iron. It's probably rusting underneath there. I maybe add another node here and another node here, and drag that in. You can see you can finesse this as much as you like and make it as accurate as you like, but I'm not going to spend too much more time on this because I know your time is valuable. And there you go, we've got a pretty good selection now. I'm going to Control and 0, and I'm going to convert this now to a selection. And there we are, we've returned to our background layer. And before I proceed, I'm going to go to Select and Feather, and I'm going to feather this 2 pixels and press Apply. And I'm going to press Control and C to copy, or Command and C on a Mac, and then Control and V to paste. So I've now pasted that cutout on my layers palette, and if I turn off my background, you can see we've cut that out. So I can now turn off my marching ants by pressing Control and D or Command and D on a Mac, and I'll zoom in and take care of these little portions quickly. So a case of just clicking to make a new pen selection. I'll zoom in here, alt click there, tiny curve there, alt click, and click there. And I control click just to finesse that select a little bit further, and that will do the job. And I'll just press selection and delete, and we'll zoom in on this last one. Should be a bit quicker, it's more straight. Control and click to finesse. So just Control, left click and drag. Control, left click and drag. And the same here, just take it up slightly, and we'll just turn that into a selection, and again we'll feather that apologies I didn't feather the last selection, but I'll move on now because time is valuable. So there you go. We'll apply that and delete, and Control D to get rid of those marching ants, and you can see it's made quite a good selection. So we'll return to that last one, and yeah, it's okay. I can live with that. In fact, a quick fix on this would be perhaps to go to our magic wand tool, click in this area, go to select, grow, and grow that by 2 pixels, and press apply, and then go to select, feather, and select 2 pixels, apply, and delete, and that smooths that edge for us. So Control and D. So it's a quick extra tip there for you. So Control and 0 to zoom out, and there we are. We've got our layer with a very smooth cutout. This is the beauty of using the pen tool. So Control and 0 to zoom out, and I'm going to Control and A now to select all of that layer, and then Control and C. And now I'm going to go to my final image, which is this little picture of a puppy dog sunning himself in Finesse and trying to cool off. And I'm going to press Control and V to paste that layer over, and I'm going to zoom out slightly, and I'm going to go to my Move tool. I'm going to press Alt. Alt will constrain the size, so I can only make it smaller or larger. I'm not making it thinner or fatter. So I'll just push that in slightly. I'll leave it about there, and then I'll move it upwards. And that's the effect I'd like to have. So Alt key and just pull that out again slightly. And I'll go to my hand tool just to get rid of those blue borders. Control and 0 to center my image, and you can see now the cutout is very good, but it's not really in keeping with this photograph as it stands because it's too sharp. So I'm just going to select that layer, and I'm going to go to Layer, New Live Filter Layer, and Gaussian Blur, and you can see that's attached itself to that cutout layer. And I'm not going to check the Preserve Alpha button. If I do, and I move this slider, you can see the effect it has is it blurs the image itself, but it retains the sharp edges. So you don't want the Preserve Alpha button pressed, you want that unchecked. And now I'm going to blur my railings or my wrought ironwork and lock slightly, just so that it looks like as though I'm focused on the dog. Wrought iron is just framing my image. And one more thing I'd like to do, just to make it a little bit more real, is to go to Layer, New Live Filter Layer, and we'll go to Noise, Add Noise, and we just want to add. And before I adjust this, I'm just going to drag the adjustment layer to my cutout layer, because at the moment it's affecting my entire image, which is not what I want. And if I turn off that layer, we can see the noise in the background layer, the picture of the puppy just on the C there. And I'll turn my layer back on, and what I want to do is I just want to match the noise in my layer to that. So I'm going to revisit my noise control panel, and I'm going to push it up slightly more, and I think we're about there. So I'm going to press Control and 0 to zoom out, and I can close my noise control panel down, and there we have it. We have a pretty good cutout, a very accurate smooth cutout using the pen tool. I haven't touched on snapping because that is a tutorial all in itself, and I'll produce something a little bit later on, and this tutorial is getting a little bit long-winded. So hopefully you found that useful. If you did, please like and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.